Thanks for tuning in to Say What Now? Reddit Stories. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and don't forget to turn on those notifications. And now, on to the story of Am I the asshole for abandoning my nephew with my parents after being his caretaker for over a year? This is going to be a bit of a long one, folks. Before the pitchforks come out, please hear me out. I'm 26F, one of 7 siblings. We grew up in a two-parent working class household in a rough inner city neighborhood. But I worked hard. I went to a top university and just landed a remote job making 185K plus after earning dual master degrees. Okay, sis. I moved into a beautiful home, planned for a future on my own terms, and was child free by choice and dating. My brother, 29M, let's call him Jay, the family's black sheep, found out that he had a son who was in foster care. The child's mother had been imprisoned for abuse, and the kid was placed with a stable, loving family who wanted to adopt him. Jay, who had no job, no home, and a history of drugs and crime, somehow fought for custody with my parents' full support and won. My sister and I were the only ones who objected, and we were labeled selfish, anti black somehow, and even worse. 3 weeks after gaining custody, Jay dropped the kid off at our parents' house. Yes, my nephew, saying he wasn't ready. They asked me to take him for the summer. I initially said no, but they guilted me, saying things like, my mom has a chronic health condition that makes it hard for her to run after a toddler. My dad worked long hours and sacrificed so much for us to have a better life. They also said stuff like, I make so much money and have no real responsibilities. I had a quote unquote easy corporate job and so much space in my house. My dad talked about how he immigrated with nothing and that we only survive because family uplifts family. When I was still hesitant, they then shifted to saying I was selfish and a bad person. This eventually got to me. I later learned in therapy that I carry a sense of survivor's guilt for essentially making it out of the hood, while so many people in my family are still struggling and living paycheck to paycheck. So eventually, I caved and I took him in for the summer, as they said. That summer, I gave my nephew a magical experience: trips, activities, and love. But my brother never came back for him. Many months had passed, and essentially, I became a full time parent against my will. Of course, because my boyfriend never agreed to be a full time parent either, my relationship came to an end. There were several times at work that I was offered to do traveling for networking and just many other things, and I had to turn each and every one of them down because I now had a child to care for. I started drowning in expenses with buying clothes, extra food, daycare, overall caring for a child, and I sort of suspected that he may need some type of therapy. It does seem like from the abuse from unfortunately his mom and possible undiagnosed ADHD. And mind you, he's not on my insurance, so some things I had to pay for out of pocket. The stress wrecked my mental health, my social health, and my career. Meanwhile, Jay still hasn't done anything. He lives in a broken down house and had the nerve to claim my nephew on his taxes and is now playing house with a new girlfriend and her 2 kids. He has done nothing for his son, nor has he seen his son. My younger sister has even come over to help to take care of him as well. And that's not something that she needs to do, as she should be enjoying her final years in college. When I tried to get help from the rest of my family, siblings, mom, and dad, my dad stated, "This is perfect training for when you and your sister become moms." I didn't ask for this. I was child free by choice. Also, my sister, who is 22 and in college, but still helps me constantly, shouldn't have to deal with this either. But she does because no one else will. Finally, I broke. Y'all, this may sound mean, it may even sound a little bit cruel, but I broke. I brought my nephew to a family barbecue at my parents' house. My sister grabbed all of his belongings out of my car and put them in their spare guest room. I explained to him gently that he be staying with grandma and grandpa for a while, kissed him, went around, looked at everybody, and then I left. I blocked my dad and my brother, and I texted my mom a long message explaining why. Now, of course, my phone is basically blowing up and I'm being crucified. My family says I'm selfish and heartless, but no one said that to Jay when he abandoned his own son. I feel so much guilt about my nephew. He's smart. He knew I was growing to be resentful because of just feeling mentally drained. And he's already been abandoned multiple times. But I wanted to make sure that he was with my mom and dad and not just back into the foster care. And unfortunately, I'm sure it feels like I'm just the latest person to walk away. I wanted him to feel love, but I also wanted my life back because I never asked for this. So, am I the asshole for walking away? Before I give my context, she did give an update. Update. I wanted to provide more context about my mom, since there is some nuance there. First, my parents aren't necessarily shitty. I'm not excusing the way they've handled this situation, their carelessness, double standards, or the harm they've caused. My dad gets absolutely no grace in this, but there's more nuance to my mom than what I'm trying to unravel. Growing up, my mom always took in strays, as my younger and sister and I would call it. Family members going through rough times, family friends who were facing the loss of housing, elderly relatives who needed care. There were so many times where my siblings and I had to give up our beds for random people my mom tried to help. She also took in actual strays like cats, dogs, and even a baby skunk for once. All of this, however, was usually at the expense of her actual kids. Oftentimes, we were forced to do the actual labor of taking care of the house guests, from babysitting to even making food. But to be quite honest, this mostly fell on my sister and I. The main reason I think she pushed so hard for me to take my nephew was because she would have done it without hesitation if she were physically able to. I think this also played into her not wanting him to be adopted. This, like I said, is not an excuse. There's still an element of her being controlling and neglecting her own children. The expectation that my sister and I have to think and act the way she does, and guilt tripping us when we don't. That there's something wrong with us for not giving our lives in complete service of others. To her, our cups should always be completely empty because we should constantly be pouring it out into people who have less than. My mom is not going to neglect my nephew. I think she's going to neglect herself into an early grave caring for him, and I don't think she'll forgive me for not wanting to do the same. Also, another update. I'm trying to get in contact with the original foster parents. I don't have their number, but I know their names and I've been trying to find them on social media. I don't know his original caseworker or stuff about the court ruling, but I'm trying to find that out too. I'm going to contact a lawyer before calling CPS, mainly because CPS in the US, and particularly the area I live in, is horrible. And honestly, from talking to other people in similar situations, they seem not to even be all that helpful. And if he's with my parents in a safe environment, he's in a safer place. So, what do you all think? That's a lot to unpack. I I get it. I get it. I get it. Because it's like you don't want your nephew to be placed into foster care, especially when there are two grandparents and essentially outside of her brother, six siblings, including her and her little sister. And even if she couldn't do it, someone else should have been able to step up if the grandparents can't. Moreover, the father should have been able to step up. But clearly, from what it sounds like, he wouldn't have been the best option. So someone should have stood up and took him in. But to push him off on the one child who is doing well for herself, I give you that, who has her own house. But at the end of the day, it sounds like she was just getting her life started. That's not the time to then say, hey, take in your nephew. You're not doing anything. That's the time to be like, okay, well, you're just getting started. You're getting your feet wet. Let me try one of your other, or for the moment, take him. I mean, he dropped his son at the grandparents' house. I'm not understanding why all of the anger and animosity and name calling isn't being directed at him. But it also feels like the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree because he was able to drop his son off with the grandparents and they seem to be just okay with it. Not only that, they went with him to court to get the child after the child was basically being adopted. And I get that you don't want necessarily your child to be put into the system if you are available, but he wasn't available. You have no job, no home, and it doesn't sound like you even want to get a job. It's so many things there to unpack that it's just crazy. And then to think, dear God, this child is going to have to go through some major therapy. Forget the adults. It should be about the child. Like what's best for the child. Like this child already had to deal with the abuse from their mother that the brother decided to lay up with to have the child, first of all. But they had to deal with the abuse from the mom. Then it sounded like the state took him, rightfully so. Mom went to jail. He's in foster care. I understand that maybe the brother didn't know, and that's understandable. That's fine. But if you didn't talk to your parents first to be like, "Hey, can he stay here until I get myself together?" Or just talk to the foster parents to be like, "Can we keep an open communication until I get myself together?" It's so many things that could have gone down that it just mm. And it's just weird to just wild out on the one sibling who was trying to be helpful. But I mean, you can't. I don't know. I don't know. That's just my thought process. I don't know. I get it though, but then it's like in the flip side, family does help family. That's a hard one, you guys. I don't know. What do y'all think? Do y'all think she should? I mean, the way she did it, yeah, the way that she gave him back was a bit much. But it doesn't sound like she had any other choice. I don't know, you guys. What do y'all think? This is such like a doozy. I don't know. Write in your comments. Let me know what you think. Ah, this is a hard one, you guys. But don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what's going through your head when you heard this story. Until next time. Bye-bye.